Hello YouTube, my name is Brucey, and this video is going to be about my Gen 5 Subaru Outback. That intro has been what I've been doing the past few years. I kind of fell backwards into making YouTube videos. I originally made DIY write-ups for maintenance on the Outback forum, but I kind of fell backwards into this and started doing experiments, and experiments became experimenting off-road. And here I am. So here's my report. I've got 100,000 miles on it now, and I wanted to show everything that I've broken and everything that's broken on its own. So let's get started. I purchased this car in August of 2016. The first year was absolutely flawless. I had zero issues, and that includes me drag racing it and installing a lift kit. In January of 2018, approximately 14 months after I purchased it, I was having serious issues during a cold spell with starting, and I went ahead and replaced the battery. There have been lots and lots of reports about that battery being problematic, and honestly, I had to jump it to get it going, and I went to Walmart and they tested it as bad. The good news about this is Subaru actually paid for this battery out of warranty. They reimbursed me for the cost that I paid Walmart. From that point in January of 2018 until January of 2019, I had no failures, problems, or issues of any kind. This was with me off-roading it. This was with the lift kit installed. I had no issues with the CVs. I had no issues with the bushings or anything like that. It was completely flawless up until January 15th of 2019, which is when I had a clunk in the front end that I self-diagnosed as a sway bar in-link. This means for the first 2.5 years and approximately 45,000 miles, the only failure that I really had was the battery. I want to attribute that in-link failure to the lift kit that I had installed at approximately 5,000 miles. Moving past the in-link, previously I had pulled the fender liner off. I'll actually show it here, but on November of 2019, I actually popped a fender off randomly on a highway. I do have the original time it popped off, and I'm showing it here on video approximately now. Oh! What happened there is the pull tabs actually pulled the fender liner down. I made it back across the creek, no problem. By the way, this is a road. It's actually listed on Google Maps, but it also just happens to have a creek running through it. But several years later, that same fender pulled down. Again, I want to attribute this to my behavior and not necessarily the fender liner itself, but I'm mentioning it here because I'm mentioning everything. Next thing worth noting is the car was in a hailstorm. And received a bunch of dents on the hood and all four doors and the roof. Not a big deal, just cosmetic. Around this time I also changed the front and rear brakes from factory. They had approximately 65,000 miles on them, and it was only a pad slap. No rotors were changed. And after the factory inlinks had been replaced earlier at approximately 45,000 miles, in June of 2020, the aftermarket Rallytech inlinks also failed in pretty much the exact same manner. I replaced those again, but after this point I stopped running front inlinks, and shortly thereafter I stopped running rear inlinks. About a month or two later, the car had 70,000 miles at this point, roughly in July of 2020, and it threw its first check engine light or service engine light. I read it as a P0455, and I found that this was likely because the gas cap wasn't put on all the way. I had loaned it out, and it's very likely that it didn't put it on all the way because once I tightened it and reset the code, it never came back. After that, the next major failure point worth mentioning was in March of 2021. When I was installing the Ironman setup, I took the factory struts off and noticed that the top hat on the driver's side had completely seemed to fail. There was no rattle, there was no symptoms, there was no squeak, but there was a ton of play in it. This was at roughly 80,000 miles at this point, and I just wanted to mention it here. Again, I will likely contribute this to abuse of the vehicle because I haven't seen many other failures like this reported. And not long after, I took off the skid plate because there was a heat shield rattle that actually ended up being a branch stuck in the skid plate. But I noticed there was a small leak coming from the transmission front differential area. I actually took it to the dealer at approximately 80,000 miles, and they replaced the seal, the O-ring, the exhaust pipe, the gasket for free. It was all covered under warranty, even in the state of the vehicle that it was in. In August, September of 2021, we had the clock spring actually fail. The biggest symptom was the horn didn't work. I had no other symptoms, but I did diagnose it as the clock spring, and I replaced it. I actually have a video on replacing that. This was at approximately 85,000 miles and 5 years of ownership at this point.
A little after that, the seat heater button stopped working. I had the car professionally detailed, and I don't know if I attribute it to that or not, the cleaner he's using, but the button just would stick, and I eventually just replaced it. It was $40 online. Just short of 100,000 miles at about 98,000 miles or so, the accessory belt idler, or tensioner rather, pulley started to squeal, and I've already replaced it. It was a very easy thing to do. I'll also have a video on that. And unfortunately, you can't always you always hope for the best, plan for the worst. I left the car parked, went on a trip. It was parked in my driveway, and someone backed into it and smashed the headlight in. This was just shy. This was at like 99.5 thousand miles, so this is just shy. And that's really it. There's a couple cosmetic things I want to mention real quick. The GPS, infotainment system, whatever we call it, has these grid lines. They're the black kind of squiggly, it almost looks like a square wave in the shot here. It doesn't really affect it. It works just fine, but cosmetically, sometimes if you wanted to have a nice picture, it's not as nice. Also in the category of mostly cosmetic but still shouldn't fail is the fake leather here. Seat bolster has come apart. This seems to be a very, very common problem, not just with the beige tan color, but also with the black. I've seen it. It's all over the place on the forum. And that's really it. There was one recall done for the fuel gauge, I believe, and that, other than that and the differential seal, that's the only time that it's been to a dealer. And yeah, overall, this has been honestly the most reliable and trustworthy car I've ever owned. I would recommend it to anybody. If anything ever happened to this car and it's totaled in an accident or a tree falls on it, I'm simply going to replace it with another one because it's just been too good to me, and it's had too much value and provided too much to not get another one. I realize the video that you've been watching is not typical, and that's kind of why I wanted to do this, because let's be honest, the stuff that broke was mostly my fault, and the stuff that did break was mostly cosmetic, with the exception of the one recall for the fuel pump, as mentioned, and the differential seal on the transmission. With those exceptions, it's been in leaks, and it's been no fault of the vehicle. It doesn't use any oil. It drives happily. It still gets upper 20s on the highway and is happy to just lay down the miles, and I look forward to laying down many more miles with this car, and I look forward to seeing you again. And I just want to say thank you all for helping us enjoy another day in West Virginia.